So good afternoon. So let's tomorrow probably we'll start the hands-on. I'll try to arrange, but before starting the session, so I came to know that in the mornings your usual college or university classes are happening. Okay, so there is one thing which I thought of asking all of you. Is it possible for you to have a session in the morning? So I would like to hear from you. In the morning, probably somewhere 9 to 10:30 or okay, okay. Okay, we have classes up to 1 o'clock. Okay, okay. So the people who are saying no, like just let me know what is the time slots good for you people. Okay, people are saying we have classes up to 1 o'clock. From when the classes will start? Oh, okay, 9 to 1, 8 to 1. Okay, 9:30. Okay, 9 to 11:30. 9 to 11:30. Maybe like at 8. 9 to 12. 9 to 5. No, no, I'm not getting. So I'm asking, what are your usual timings? Okay, so that I can plan, because the developer whom we are planning to engage is having some clash of meetings, other client meetings. So that is why I'm asking if there is some other possibility. Mm, okay, so what about okay, take at night time. Okay, evening at 6. Mm, okay, so how many of you are comfortable after 6? After 6 p.m. Okay. Still people are saying a lot of no, no. Okay. Okay. So I'll do one thing. Anyways, tomorrow or day after tomorrow, probably we'll starting the hands-on sessions. Okay. So I'll quickly send a poll. Okay. I'll quickly send a poll. I'll post it, and based on the majority of the people, I'll take some decision. Okay. Because 3:30 to 5 is there are some other US client meets with, for the developer, so that's what making me to consider to shift. Okay, other. Okay, okay, fine. So let's look at the possibility. Let me get started. Okay, okay. So yesterday we discussed it regarding gas, the concept of gas we discussed, where gas is the computation power which is consumed when a smart contract is executed, and gas into gas time, gas price is something which is used to calculate transaction fee. And then we saw the DAP, the EVM, then the application architecture of DAP. Okay, so before going to the hands-on, I thought I'll give you an approach on how dApps are being built in a real-time scenario. Okay, so I'll take a quick example, and second thing which I'll discuss is, see, for example, you are given a scenario, a scenario like, hey, you need to build an application for this scenario. These are the challenges. Then how should you evaluate if blockchain can be used or not is also one big important question. Because sometimes what happens, just because you learn blockchain, you can't apply blockchain for every use case or every business scenario, right? So you should have some rational thought process to decide whether blockchain can be used for a given scenario or not, or to solve a given problem statement or not. Okay, so these are the two things which we'll discuss. And tomorrow I'm inviting couple of my industry friends who will be taking, so they worked on real world blockchain projects in telecom industry, supply chain industry, and some other industries. So I thought I will involve them, so that you will also understand how blockchain is used in different industries from other leaders. Okay, so they'll be sharing some of their practical experiences on how they are using blockchain and what are the kinds of use cases they are working on. Okay, so I think with that the theoretical part will come to an end, and then of course we can move with the hands-on. Okay, so is it clear? So the today's agenda is blockchain evaluation, as well as understanding how to build a blockchain application for a given scenario. What is the design thinking approach with which you should proceed? Okay, so let me share the screen. Okay, so say for example you are given a scenario to consider you to build a blockchain application or some smart contracts. So how should you start about it? So the first step is you need to understand how the current system is working. Okay, and of course at the end I'll explain you with a real some example. Okay, but the first step is, okay, so the first step is understanding the current system, and then you need to define actors. So actors is not the movie actors, of course. Actors here are the users who interact with the system. Okay, and then you need to define interaction maps. So all these actors or users will be interacting with each other in present system, right? So you need to define the interaction maps. And third, you need to define a trust map. Okay, so a trust map is where you need to understand who is providing the trust in that particular interaction. Sometimes bank may be involved, sometimes government may be involved, or sometimes a trusted third party is being involved, whoever it may be. So what is the trust map? And then you need to define the journey map. Journey map is nothing but what are the modules a application should have, what are the smart contracts an application should have, a decentralized application should have. And then comes the smart contract interactions. So of course, the moment we say the thought process should start, like, see, anyways, in divergent in design thinking there is a concept called as divergent thinking and convergent thinking. When you are trying to work out a solution, you need to have a divergent thinking at first. That means you need to look at almost all possibilities of way of building a application. Okay, and then out of them, over a period of time, you should get into convergent thinking, where Out of all the possible solutions, you need to choose one best feasible solution, okay, which is realistic and which can be easily implemented and which can give the expected benefits. Okay, so that is how your thought process should be when you're looking to write smart contracts or build decentralized applications. One second. Okay, next. And why this approach? Because at the end of the day, blockchain is all about trust, right? And traditional centralized applications deal a lot with transfer of information. Okay, but blockchain application relies on transfer of trust. So every transaction happening on blockchain is nothing but a transfer of trust that yes, whatever transaction happened, it is valid, it is verified, and all the nodes in the network has come consensus to validate it. Okay, so that is why you need to choose those scenarios only when trust is by a centralized IT application. And then you should replace the backend layer of centralized servers to decentralized servers to bring trust. Okay, and there are many cases where trust is not that required. Okay, so in that cases you are not expected to use blockchain. So anyways, we'll take a couple of examples, but the past and future of enterprises will look like this. So today, in a centralized system, once you initiate a transaction, the post will record to the transmission network and then it will be validated by the central server and the transaction gets complete. That is how centralized systems work. But by this time, you would have realized once a transaction is initiated, it will post the transaction record into the transmission network. The nearest node will receive it first. It will validate the transaction. It will broadcast this transaction to the network. All the nodes come to consensus on transaction, and then this transaction becomes part of block, and then it is recorded to blockchain, and then first confirmation comes. So all these processes are not there in centralized IT systems, which we are aware, because in centralized IT system there is no broadcasting. If it is one central system, what is the essence of broadcasting? And second, there is no rules based engine. There is no concept of smart contract in centralized IT systems. And third, because it is recorded on one central server, people usually don't trust, and there is no scope of syncing in real time or anything else with centralized IT systems. So one thing you need to understand is, even though trust is an value proposition of decentralized IT systems, the number of computation steps and the number of interactions are more compared to centralized IT systems. So someone was always asking, is there any limitation of blockchain, limitation of decentralized IT systems? The number of transactions or interactions between multiple nodes are more compared to centralized IT systems. But still, why are we using it in some scenarios? For trust. Because if you want to gain something, you need to lose somewhere, or you need to look at some other trade-offs with less priority. Okay, so wherever there is a requirement of trust, irrespective of performance issues, I will go with blockchain. But if there are some performance requirements, but still not worried about trust, then go with centralized IT systems. Okay, so you need to, as engineers, you need to have an approach to choose which one to go with. Just because you learn blockchain, don't try to use it for everything. Okay, Don't do that. Next, need for blockchain. Now you need to, so how will I know, or what are the questions should I ask before going to use blockchain for a scenario? So what should I do? What are the questions should I ask? So here are the questions. First question, do you need to store state? Nothing but, do you need to store changes on a particular data? If yes, if yes, proceed to next question. If the answer is no, don't use blockchain. The best example is, you have written an article on a blog, okay, and somehow you changed it. Do you want to store the change you did for your article on the blog? Not that important, right? Why should someone worry about integrity of the article? But for example, there is a patent. Okay. Now there is a patent document which shouldn't be modified once it is approved, right? So in that case, do you need to store state change if any patent changes happen? Then probably, okay, yeah, integrity of a patent document or a agreement is important. Okay, rather than taking patent, let's take an agreement. So if it is a business document or an agreement document, yes, I need to store any state changes, because any terms and conditions changed will impact the agreement altogether. So I'm worried about any changes happening on it. So you need to understand how serious or how important to store the state change. If the answer is no, you can outrightly say don't use blockchain for this scenario, because it's not that useful, because blockchain is a cost, right, at the end of the day. Next, the next question to ask, imagine, yes, I need to store a state change. The second question is, are there multiple writers? So multiple writers is nothing but, again, let's take another scenario. The same articles only. You have written an article for yourself and you are updating, you kept on updating it for your purposes. In that case also, I need not prove to someone else. I need not prove to someone else that the integrity is there. So even in that case where integrity of data is not important or not to be proved to someone else, then don't use blockchain. But imagine there are multiple writers. So say for example, again, agreement. For a given agreement, of course, there will be multiple people. At least an agreement happens between two stakeholders, right? And these two stakeholders are two different people or two different organizations or whatever it is. So if there are two multiple writers or multiple writers, then yes, consider, because one should prove to other, one should be accountable for other for a given agreement. So because of that reason, you should proceed with next question when there are multiple writers involved. Then the next question is, can you use an always online trusted third party? Now imagine, okay, imagine there is a government body, okay, government body, and of course we know, right, the stamp papers and some legal agreements happen, okay, where I can rely on that trusted third party for every agreement I do on that. If that is the case, then don't use blockchain again, because if there is trusted third party, if there is trusted third party who is available 24 hours, then I need not worry about using blockchain because he will be facilitating it. But star, a small star at the top. If the cost of involving a trusted third party is more, then consider looking at blockchain, because with blockchain the trusted third party can be disintermediated. That means can be removed. Because say for example, let's take rather than taking example of agreement, let me take another example which is relevant for this. For example, you want to go and buy a SIM card, and if you want to go and buy a SIM card, you are a user, and what to say, the mobile network is a service provider. So when you are buying a SIM card, you need to prove your identity, and that is when Aadhaar card based authentication is being in place. So the moment you go and you want to buy an SIM, that is an agreement, that is a agreement between user and mobile network service provider, that for a paid amount X, we will give you these services, and we abide to that. That's an agreement indirectly. And of course, before issuing a SIM card, you are asked to put a fingerprint, and then your Aadhaar card details are entered, and an OTP is coming up to the registered mobile number. You are entering it and you are confirming that, yes, this is the person and I am the one who will be going to use the SIM. So in this case, putting a blockchain network to disintermediate identity is not required, because there is always a trusted third party, Aadhaar, which is by government. Okay, where if the answer is yes, then don't use blockchain. But imagine if for every authentication by Aadhaar is charging 300 or 400 rupees, then you can build self-sovereign identity based on blockchain, where you can get a unique digital identity on blockchain and you can use it for your identity. Because involving a trusted third party sometimes is a huge cost, and in some cases involving a trusted third party is not a cost. So in that case, why do you want to actually disintermediate them and put a blockchain? Not required, right? So only for efficiency purposes or cost saving purposes people do adopt. So if you can use an always online trusted third party at low cost, okay, if the answer is yes, then don't use blockchain. One second, I'm getting a call. Okay, sorry, yeah. So then, but if there are some cases where you can't engage a trusted third party, then if the answer is no, then go to the next question, that are all writers known to each other? If all writers are nothing but the users who are involved in the transaction. Okay, if all writers are known with each other, if the answer is no, use permissionless blockchain. Permissionless blockchain is nothing but okay, I think I didn't discuss about public. I discussed about public and private blockchain, right? Now there are other way of categorizing blockchains, that is permissionless and permissioned blockchain. Okay, permissionless is nothing but anyone can use it and anyone can go and maintain a node. So then what is the difference between permissionless and public? I'll come to that. I'll explain when I discuss about public and permissioned blockchain. So this permissionless blockchain is nothing but permissionless public blockchain. Okay, but there is a possibility where it is public permissioned blockchain. So how is this possible? I'll come to that. Okay, so if all writers are not known to each other, so those are peers and we don't know who are they, and there is no trusted third party, then you can use permissionless blockchain. So Bitcoin is best example of permissionless blockchain. Now imagine, are there multiple writers? Yes. Can we use a trusted third party? No. Then the question asked is, are all writers known to each other? Yes. If the answer is yes, then are all writers trusted? That means all writers trust themselves. If the answer is yes, don't use blockchain. Why? See, anyways, the writers involved have trust on themselves and they know each other. Then why should you use blockchain? Right? Blockchain enables transactions in trustless world. Only then there is more value for it. So if trust is there between the stakeholders involved, then why should you use blockchain? Not required, right? But if the answer to all, are all writers trusted, is no, then go to the next question. What is that? Is public verifiability required? What is this public verifiability required? See, sometimes, let's take the example of supply chain. I discussed long back. All the supply chain has suppliers, manufacturers, distributors, wholesalers, retailers, right? All these stakeholders are private organizations. So they will be using permissioned blockchain because all the stakeholders in that particular supply chain only can maintain a node. So that is nothing but permissioned blockchain. Sir, last time you said private blockchain. Okay, let me come to that. Let me come to that. But in supply chain, any consumer can see the provenance of the data. Any consumer can check the authenticity of the data, right? In supply chain. Yes, please answer. In supply chain, any end consumer who scans the QR should be able to check the authenticity of the product. Yes or no? Yes. In that case, even though only stakeholders can maintain the nodes to this blockchain, the ledger data should be visible to consumers. What is that? The ledger data, the blockchain data, the distributed ledger data should be visible to general public also. So that is where the difference between public permissioned blockchain and private permissioned blockchain comes. This may be a little confusing, but all you need to understand is, when I say public or private, I am talking about who should view the distributed ledger data. And when I am saying permissionless or permissioned, I am talking about who can maintain a node. Let me repeat it again. When I am talking about public or private, I am talking about who can view the distributed ledger data. But when I am talking about permissionless or permissioned, I am talking about who can maintain a node. Okay. So with this, 4 combinations come. What are they? Public permissionless, public permissioned, private permissionless, private permissioned. But the point is, private permissionless blockchain is not possible. Why? Private itself means no one should look at the data. But you are saying permissionless blockchain, anyone can maintain a node. So that is why it is ignored. That is why here you can't find private permissionless because it is meaningless, right? But public permission and private permission are meaningful, because in supply chain scenario, even though the nodes to be maintained are permissioned in nature, the ledger data should be visible to end consumers also. So that is why, if there is public verifiability required, then use public permissioned blockchain. But if public verifiability is not required, then private permissioned blockchain. Best example is R3 Corda. In the initial discussions, I gave you an example where 40 international banks came together to facilitate interbank transactions on blockchain. So in that case, only those 40 banks have permission to maintain nodes in the blockchain network. That is why it is called as permissioned blockchain. And only those bank account users, sorry, not bank account users. Yeah, only bank employees or bank account users can look at the ledger data. That is why it is private. Okay, I don't say public also. I mean, users or account holders can't see. Only those bank employees can look at the ledger data if the transactions are settled or not. So that is best example of private permissioned blockchain. Why private permission? Private because only bank employees can see. Permission because only those banks, those 40 banks can maintain nodes to this permissioned blockchain. Okay, so I hope, anyways, see, it will take for some time for you to use this in your career, but I'm giving you a context because in future, if someone asks you in interview that, okay, I understand you learned blockchain, but I'll give you a scenario. Can we use blockchain for that? Then you should be able to answer that. So that is why I'm covering this question, because I'm covering this answer because blockchain is not universally applicable for every scenario. No. If you use like that, there is no meaning for blockchain. Blockchain is useful and valuable only when there is a need for stored state, when there is a need for doing a transaction between writers who don't trust them each other, only when public verifiability is required. So these are the scenarios you need to look at while writing a smart contract or while building a decentralized application. So any questions on this? Any questions? Or is it clear? Or you didn't understand anything, or you understood? Please explain about what is multiple writers. No, multiple writers is nothing but in a given transaction, more than two people or more than one person is involved. See, if you, anyways, you won't do transaction with yourself, right? Or within organization, blockchain is not useful because will a organization do any transaction with itself? So no, right? So there should be multiple writers or multiple users who will be using the application. Only in that case blockchain is useful. Within organization or only for one individual, blockchain is not of use. But if you look at ERP application, within organization it is useful. Okay, then you may get it out. So even within organization, is there any possibility? Yes. Sometimes what happens, within organization also there will be multiple departments. So if there is no trust or if there is some discrepancy between multiple departments, or for some companies, there will be sister companies. Nothing but under one umbrella of company, there will be multiple sub companies. So if there are some transactions happening between them also, you can use blockchain. See, at the end of the day, all you need to understand is there should be for a transaction to happen, there should be two minimum individuals or organizations or writers. Here, writer is nothing but the one who is using this application. That's it. Who will be initiating a transaction? Okay, so is it clear, Krishna? Okay. Okay, so consider voting. Okay, that's a good thing. Okay, so do you need to store state? Yes, for example, see, if you look at voting, okay, now once a vote is voted, it shouldn't be changed. So, should I need to store state? Yes, definitely. If the state changes, that means the vote gets tampered. So, I should not accept vote tampering. So, in that case, do you need to store state change, if any? Yes, right? So, yes, you need to go to next question. Are there multiple writers? Yes, of course, because if you look at the multiple writers, for example, I voted, I casted a vote. Now, there is a count inspector who will count the vote for a given party or for given scenario. Then all these numbers will be given to election commission, and there are multiple people through which your vote which is casted goes through. Okay, even if somewhere in between, if someone tries to do something or manipulate the data, so imagine at the time of counting, someone tried to tamper the data or someone tried to do something else. We don't know. So, and one polling booth, few set of people will be counting. Other counting poll, few set of people. So there are multiple writers who will be counting votes across various places, and all of them will be consolidated. So within a mandal itself there will be multiple polling booths, but all the individual polling booths will be maintained by different people, and all of them will be consolidated to decide the who is the winner in that particular mandal. So yes, there are multiple writers. Now the next question. So is the answer no? No, right? It is yes. Are there multiple writers? Yes. Then we'll go to the next question. Can you use an always online trusted third party? The answer is no, because all EVMs, the electoral voting machines or yeah, election voting machines or whatever, electoral voting machines are not connected to online, to be truthful. There is no central system. They all have local storage, and once they are connected to some counting some system, the data is retrieved to that system for counting purpose. So the answer for can you use an always online trusted third party for EVM machines, the answer is no. Okay, then let's go to are all writers known. So the point is, are all writers known? What is the answer for that? Any guess? No or yes? All writers are known, right? Are they known? Yes, all citizens are known. And all the electoral officers are known. All counter, the people who are counting are known. Everyone is known. But the only thing is, then comes, so you should not use permissionless blockchain here. Because imagine if you use a permissionless blockchain, then a citizen of Pakistan may come and participate in India's election. Is it agreeable for you? Is it okay? No, right? So, of course, all writers are known. All people who will vote, all people who count, all people who will be doing all the things, EVM machines and all, maintaining EVM machines, everything is known. So, that is why the answer is yes. Then comes, are all writers trusted? So answer for this, are all writers trusted? No. That is why you will go to this. Of course, you will use blockchain. Now comes, is public verifiability required? Definitely yes. Right? At the end of the day, the citizens should know that yes. See, citizens should not know who voted for whom, but citizens should know how, which party got how many votes for sure. Okay, so the identity of the citizen need not be revealed. That is why, is public verifiability required? Yes. What shall we use? Public permissioned blockchain. So public permissioned blockchain is nothing but only election commission will maintain a permissioned blockchain to which all EVMs can be connected in real time, and the identity of the person will not be Aadhaar card. Aadhaar card will be hashed, or voting ID will be hashed, and vote associated will be hashed. But only the private blockchain can retrieve how many votes were casted to whom. So that means in permissioned blockchain, only election officer or election commissioner or couple of people who are authorized to see how many votes were casted to which party is only seen. No other information is visible to anyone. Right? Today, even if you go with a ballot, will you write your voter ID on the ballot? No, right? It is just one vote to one party. So that is the only information which will be visible for general public. But internally, you can define smart contracts or chain codes such a way that for a given Aadhaar card, there can't be two votes. For a voter ID, there can't be two votes. So how should that condition be written in the smart contract? So you need to write the smart contracts and deploy a permissioned blockchain of electoral voting machines. And then every Aadhaar card, a fingerprint enabled voting, okay, enabled voting will will initiate a vote to a particular party. But who voted to that particular party? The identity is hidden, because your Aadhaar card will be hashed as soon as the EVM, once a vote gets into EVM. So such kind of privacy preserving permissioned blockchain can be used for voting for sure. Okay, and that's a nice thing that someone asked to give an real world example like voting. That's a good thing. Okay, so who asked that? Yeah, Venkat Reddy. So is it clear, Venkat Reddy? Okay, okay, that's nice. So, so is it clear to all others? Okay, 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 that's good. Okay, so I hope now you understood. You got a picture of how to evaluate a scenario for a blockchain or not. So this is very important. See, ability to develop is one thing, but whether you are supposed to use that for a given scenario or not is again the next level. Okay, so always remember to use blockchain only in these cases. Okay, next. And of course there are multiple questions you need to ask if you want to use, if you want to check if blockchain is required or not. One is counterparties, nothing but which entities create and post transactions, nothing but stakeholders. Second, processes, the current process versus new proposed process. You should explore this. Then data, what data should be on blockchain and what data should be off chain. Off chain is nothing but only few data points which shouldn't be changed can be put on blockchain, and all other supportive data can be put on general centralized data storage, okay, outside of blockchain also. That is called as off chain data. So you should be choosy enough to put only data which is critical, whose integrity should be maintained. So you need to decide what data should be put on blockchain and who should and view of it. So in private blockchain scenario, you can decide who should view what data. But in public blockchain, of course, everything is visible for general public except identity of the people. Okay. Next, technology and cost. Of course, anyways, as freshers, probably you will not involve in budgeting or other aspects, but at least senior blockchain developers will look at the solution architects will look at cost, technology aspects also. Then you need to see the people skills and organizational changes. See, implementing a blockchain is not only technological change, it is an organizational change also. And then there will be regulatory issues, some by governments and all. There will be some industry centric context. For example, let's take supply chain again. So in supply chain, what happens? What if some wholesalers are not ready to onboard to this blockchain? Sometimes the users may not, right? We don't know. So you need to look at industry as a whole also. Like what is the benefit for each stakeholder to use blockchain? You should work out. Not you, blockchain product leaders in future. Like in future, if you assume those roles, then you need to look at that. Then you need to look at what is the return on investment. So if a company is investing some money to use blockchain, then what is the benefit they are getting? Performance, security. So there are lot of parameters which you need to look at evaluating and all. Okay, so I think these are not so of course these are not relevant much for you as a developer, but why I'm touching upon, because there are very few blockchain professionals in the ecosystem. So so once you start your career, probably you will be moving to higher roles much faster. Okay, so in that case, this knowledge will help you to stand out and do things more than just developing smart contracts. Okay, and of course, to see, you need to look at who is the intermediary, how much transparency is important, okay, where the information source is, manual processing, is there any manual paper based processes, can we eliminate it by using blockchain, can we bring trust, how the trust is happening in present system, how the authentication is happening in present system, and is there any time delay for sharing of information, so time sensitivity of the data. So there are multiple aspects you need to look at for evaluating whether blockchain is useful for a scenario or not. Okay, anyways, these are all. So again, yeah, governance, structures, performance, security, privacy, okay, implementation approach. So as you become more senior blockchain developers or project managers, then all these things becomes important for you. Okay. And of course, tomorrow we'll discuss couple of use cases, but there are, so you can just look at the list. There are lots of use cases in financial services, payments, capital markets. Okay. So, okay. Okay. Now, so, anyways, I think oracles, these things, these couple of slides are not that important. So, usually, blockchain oracles are, so say for example, in some scenarios, you need to integrate a centralized IT system with blockchain network. So in that case, Oracle is a intermediary between blockchain network and offline world. Offline in the sense out of blockchain world. So in that case, oracles are used. So probably you will not be working on oracles, at least even if you start your career now, at least in 1 or 2 years you won't be using oracles. But understand that oracle is something which integrates or which forms a bridge between centralized IT system and decentralized IT system in a secured way. Okay, next. Now let's take an example. Okay, Uber. Okay, let's take sample use case Uber. So I told you, right, how to, you need to look at actors involved. So once you decided that yes, blockchain is useful, then you need to look at who are the actors involved, what is the interaction map, what is the trust map, and then you need to look at the journey map, right? So now let's take an example and then see how we can build a decentralized Uber. So this is existing system and this is proposed system. Okay, see, I told you already, right? You can build apps with blockchain as a backend, and those are called as dapps. So Uber is an app, Facebook is an app, Flipkart is an app, Zomato is an app. So all these apps, if all the conditions are defined by the people who developed those apps and they are maintaining central infrastructure, centralized IT systems, can we build decentralized applications in similar model, and all business agreements or business logic can be codified into smart contracts, and can we build applications which are decentralized in nature? So let's take example of Uber. So if you look at Uber, who are the actors in Uber? One is users or riders, the people who want to ride, take a ride. Second, drivers are actors, right? Next, mobile app and telecom infrastructure. Of course, if you want to uh, book a cab, or if a driver wants to receive a request, a ride request, he should have a mobile phone app. And then of course telecom infrastructure also, right? So the driver moving in a vehicle will have a 4G data for him to access the app. Similarly, you should have either Wi-Fi at home or probably mobile data to use it. So telecom infrastructure and mobile app is again another stakeholder involved. The fourth is ride sharing platform, nothing but Uber. So Uber is the trusted third party here. Uber is a company which created a platform where multiple drivers and multiple users can request rides and give rides, right? What is Uber doing here? Just facilitating an application and taking some commission out of every ride. Other than that, is there anything else Uber is doing, guys? Is there anything else Uber is doing? No, right? Other than that, is it doing anything? No. It just build a application, and if there are some challenges or some complaints, they will rectify. Even that also online only. Did you ever speak to some Uber customer care? No. Yeah, reviews, ratings. That's it. Anything else? Nothing, right? Everything online. Everything is digitalized. Then comes payment infrastructure. Of course, there is a wallet For Ola or Uber, people, they came up with their own wallet for transactions, or there is a payment gateway where you can pay early, prepayment, post payment, or cash payment, and then the drivers will deposit the money in bank. Uber will cut a percentage. So payment infrastructure is also involved in general existing system. Now let's imagine, can we build a decentralized Uber application, that is Uber DApp or Duber. Let's take some dummy name, Duber. And the ride sharing platform can be replaced by a peer-to-peer blockchain infrastructure where what all Uber is doing are written in smart contracts, and all payments are driven by those smart contracts in Ether or whatever currency they are using. So let's take Ether only, because we are building this DApp and deploying on Ethereum network. Imagine the transactions will happen in Ether rather than physical currency. See, transaction should happen on banks, then net banking, debit card, credit card, wallet, UPI, all these things are coming. If it is Ethereum network and all transactions happening on Ethereum, there is only one way of transaction. What is that? Wallet to wallet. That's it. So this is how I reduced or removed two stakeholders and replaced with a peer-to-peer blockchain infrastructure. Now let's look at the next interaction map. So once you are done with actors, identifying the actors, what is the next question you should do? You should work on define interaction maps and derive relation between actors. For example, what is user doing with the rider? He will request a service, right? So the relation between user and car driver is service delivery. Okay, and what is the relation between telecom or mobile infrastructure with user or driver? Connectivity. So why they interact? Connectivity purpose. So bank is engaging with whom? Car drivers, users, and organization Uber for recording the transactions. So Uber will maintain all the ride details, the transactions, and everything. And what is Uber doing with user or driver? Matching service. It is matchmaking. What is matchmaking? I requested a service for a cab, and Uber app is facilitating the nearest driver available. Now, if you replace these two stakeholders with one blockchain, then blockchain network as a backend. So at the front end app wise, there won't be any difference. It is service delivery only. And with respect to connectivity, same telecom and mobile infrastructure is used. But for matchmaking service, the smart contract will drive it. And for payments, once the user reaches to that particular location, from wallet of user to wallet of driver, auto transaction will happen. That's it. And of course, the people who are maintaining the node, so it's a transaction, right? So who will get the transaction fee? The node which added block in that particular time slot, which includes this particular transaction, will get the transaction fee. And here Uber is earning millions of dollars. One single player is earning lots of money and bringing monopoly kind of thing, and they are taking more percentage from drivers, making them unsustainable. But if you can write a smart contract which gives fair price, okay, fair price, in a given scenario. So for example, in a particular region, if the number of riders is this much and if the number of drivers is this much, then surge should act. So everything becomes transparent. And if Uber themselves wantedly create such kind of scenario indirectly, we don't know. But if we are using blockchain, then smart contract will not do that. Will do promptly. Will look at active drivers available, active users available in a region, and based on the demand and supply, dynamic pricing will come in a trust and transparent way. So the matchmaking service happens in a better way. Payments also happen better way. There is no commission to be given. Or the app, the one who developed this smart contract can take some percentage if he wants. But still, who is owning? Lots of nodes in the network are deploying the node. So there are a lot of people. So this is called as shared economy, where money is not going to one central player who is trying to influence the market by using monopoly. But here, if this DApp is trying to take more percentage, another DApp can be created easily with little percentage. It is as easy as just running different smart contract. Drivers or users can switch to different platforms easily. Isn't that true? Isn't that a wonderful use case for blockchain? Okay. Explain the role of nodes in this case. Very simple. All nodes will validate the transactions. Say for example, the DApp will have a user has put one location to other location. The moment the driver closes the ride, ends the ride, the transaction should happen. So the transaction smart contract should execute. Payment smart contract should get executed. All the nodes in the network will execute the smart contract and will validate the transaction. That's it. What is there? All nodes will do the same. See here, Uber is maintaining a central server where all the algorithms are written. Here, all those things are written as smart contracts. That's it. That is the only difference. Here, a central player validating the transactions, but here, multiple nodes validating the transaction. That's it. Trust. With respect to trust, yeah. From the transaction fee, automatically it can deduct. Okay, or if the app wants to scale, what will they say? Initially put a tip. That's it. Like how Bitcoin did, you can also do, because there is no infrastructure cost for you, right? It's only deploying an app on a public blockchain. Why are you worried about infrastructure? Uber means they need to maintain infrastructure, that and this, otherwise. And how will we know that driver really dropped at the destination? The driver will end it. Okay, so even those conditions of discrepancy also can be written. Okay, so say for example, there is a complaint. So you can use chatbots if there is some complaint requirement, or if any one of the user is not satisfied, the review will go to a bad review will be on whom? The driver. So if ratings are bad, then automatically, like Uber, this blockchain will not remove any bad reviews or bad ratings. It will put transparently. So if more complaints are coming over a period of time on a particular car driver, then obviously the smart contract will start giving less orders to it. If more kind of complaints are coming on a particular user again and again, then he will be stopped from using services. At least it will take, of course, the first initial issues will be there, whether it is Uber or blockchain. So it's a behavioral issue, not a technological issue. And how will they know if driver dropped at location? Two ways. One may be GPS location, or if the driver ends, driver will click on end trip. That's it. Based on the, see, like because locations we can't rely, right? Just based on location, sometimes we'll go little front, or will stop before reaching the destination. So end trip click is what makes the smart contract know that driver dropped at destination. That's it. If there is a discrepancy, again it can raise, the user can raise, or here we can put, a condition that end trip should happen from both driver and user. See, I mean, we can put whatever conditions we want. Okay. See, this is just a proposed system, right? So of course you need to work a lot. It's not that easy to replace Uber, but still there is a possibility to create a decentralized application. See, look at the possibility. Next, journey map. So this is where all you will write all governance. Multiple smart contracts should be used. Okay, so there will be driver registry, user registry, rating registry. Then there will be governance contract. So this is where what are the types of complaints, how should the app act, everything should be. So delivery matching contract, rating contract. Then all these smart contracts will be interfaced with the mobile application. And if some other external systems are being connected with them, Oracle applications can be used. Oracle is not the Oracle company. Okay, here Oracle is nothing but if blockchain wants to communicate with some other IT system, we can use Oracle. So this is how you can put multiple smart contracts and then build a decentralized applications. So on a user interface level, there won't be much differences. Okay, in future, the apps will be apps only with respect to front side look, but at the back end, things will be different. Okay, I think I answered your question, Krishna Swarup. So of course, multiple smart contracts create a application, because why people split smart contracts? Why don't we write all smart contracts in one big smart contract? Because imagine in future, if you want to change governance contract with few changes, then rather than deploying all the smart contracts, you can just update that new smart contract can be deployed, and from the front end API will be calling the new smart contract. Okay, so that is why people split all business functions into small smart contracts, so that they can be managed easily. Okay, so any questions on this? A poll, I'll share it tomorrow. Okay, anyways, tomorrow we'll have some guest talks. After guest talks, I'll put a poll, and based on the poll result, I will announce the what to say, the time. Okay, and then we'll plan accordingly. So all are good with the discussion today, the evaluation approach, and some real use case on how to build a DApp. Okay, good, good. So I think, so if you have any further questions, so this is end of my presentation. So if you have any further questions, you can raise. I think with time, the number of questions are reducing. So that means you're understanding good, or not understanding anything. Okay, nice. So, okay, explanation is understandable. Okay, okay, fine. So I think you got, so after listening multiple times, probably now you are able to correlate and understand the terms, right? So this will help you in your hands-on sessions. Okay. Okay, guys. So let's catch up tomorrow. We'll have a couple of guest talks tomorrow, and I hope you will enjoy them. And this is an addition I'm doing. Actually, this is not part of the program, but I thought recently we had a short panel discussion where I invited a couple of my friends, and then I got this idea. Why not uh, asking them to share their experiences with you also, because that will help you, that will inspire you. So okay, so yeah, so the reference documents, right? So I think it's been pending. So tomorrow, remind me without any delay, further delay, I will share all this, because before starting hands-on, you can just go and refresh all the concepts. Okay, I will share, guys. It's been long pending from my side only, so I'll do it tomorrow without fail. Okay, I'll share a Google Drive link tomorrow, and you can find the reference documents and some of the presentations which I can openly share. I'll put them up, and you can review them. Okay. Okay, guys. Let's catch up tomorrow. Good day. Bye. Thank you, Sahitya Garu, for hosting.